Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
SpongeBob died in 1946 from nuclear radiation. The creator confirmed it. And the unaired pilot? It shows his grave. Steven Hillenburg wasn't making a cartoon. He was documenting the aftermath of Operation Crossroads, the nuclear test at Bikini Atoll. Every character is a mutation. Every episode is a warning. And Nickelodeon spent 20 years hiding the real story. Here's what they don't tell you. Bikini Bottom isn't under the ocean. It's at ground zero of a nuclear test site. You think you know SpongeBob, happy sponge, lives in a pineapple, works at the Krusty Krab, best friends with Patrick, annoying neighbor to Squidward. But you've never asked the obvious questions. Why does a sponge have consciousness? Why can a starfish talk? Why does a squirrel need an airsuit underwater when everyone else breathes just fine? The answer is in the name, Bikini Bottom. Not ocean floor, not sea town. Bikini Bottom, as in Bikini Atoll, where the United States detonated 23 nuclear bombs between 1946 and 1958, where radiation levels are still lethal today, where nothing should be able to live. Steven Hillenburg chose that name deliberately. In a 1999 interview with Animation World magazine, he said, and I'm quoting directly, "The location is everything. Once you understand where they are, you understand what they are." What they are, not who, what. Because SpongeBob and his friends aren't characters. They're specimens, mutations, the impossible life that emerged from nuclear devastation. Let that sink in. Every episode you watched as a kid, you were watching the documented behavior of irradiated sea creatures. Creatures that shouldn't exist. Creatures that only exist because we dropped atomic bombs on their ancestors. Here's where it gets darker. The show premiered in 1999, exactly 50 years after the first nuclear test at Bikini Atoll. That's not a coincidence. Hillenburg waited. He waited until the classification period expired on certain government documents. Documents about what really happened to the marine life? In 2003, during a college guest lecture that was recorded but never officially released, Hillenburg showed slides, not cartoon slides, scientific photographs, images from 1946 to 1958, images of fish with changes. A student asked why he became an animator instead of continuing his marine biology career. His response, word for word from the recording: "Sometimes the only way to tell the truth is to pretend it's fiction." But here's what breaks everything open. The unaired 1997 pilot. Not the one you can find online. The original submission to Nickelodeon. 7 minutes of content that only 5 executives ever saw. I've spoken to one of them. The pilot opened differently. No theme song. No pineapple house. Just darkness. Then a date appears. July 25th, 1946. The date of the Baker nuclear test at Bikini Atoll. We see the explosion. We see the shockwave. We see the seafloor changing. Then we see graves. Tiny graves made of coral and rock. One of them has a name, Robert. Not SpongeBob, Robert. The executive told me, off the record, that Hillenburg's original pitch was different. SpongeBob wasn't his real name. It was what he called himself because he couldn't remember his actual name, because the radiation had destroyed most of his memories. But he remembered one thing. He remembered being happy before the light came. Nickelodeon made Hillenburg change it, made him remove the graves, made him brighten the colors, made him add the laugh. That iconic SpongeBob laugh. It wasn't in the original. In the original, SpongeBob never laughed. He just smiled, constantly, like something was broken in his brain, which makes sense when you understand what radiation does to neural tissue. The characters aren't randomly weird, they're specifically damaged. Each personality trait matches a documented effect of radiation exposure. Hillenburg didn't create these personalities, he observed them. SpongeBob's manic happiness. Radiation-induced neurological damage affecting emotional regulation. Patrick's stupidity. Severe cognitive impairment from direct exposure. Squidward's depression. Chronic radiation syndrome affecting serotonin production. Sandy Cheeks is the most disturbing of all. She's not from Texas. She's from a research facility. She's there to study them, to document them. Her airsuit isn't for breathing. It's for protection. Protection from the residual radiation that's still killing everything in Bikini Bottom. Watch any episode with Sandy. Really watch it. She's not participating in their world. She's observing it, taking notes, running experiments. She even has a direct line to the surface, to handlers we never fully see. The tree dome isn't her home. It's a clean room, a decontamination chamber, the only place in Bikini Bottom where radiation levels are safe for prolonged mammalian exposure. But that's not even the darkest part. The formula for the Krabby Patty? It's not a recipe. It's a chemical formula. The molecular structure of a compound that makes irradiated meat edible. This comes directly from Hillenburg's background. Before animation, he worked at Ocean Institute in Dana Point, California. His specific research, the effects of environmental pollutants on marine ecosystems, including radiation. In his personal notes, donated to the Animation Guild archive after his death, there's a sketch, dated 1993. It shows the Krabby Patty formula. Not the joke version from the show, the real one he initially designed. It's the chemical structure of potassium iodide, the same compound given to radiation victims to prevent thyroid cancer. Mr. Krabs isn't greedy, he's desperate. He's trying to keep everyone alive by feeding them the only thing that slows their decay. The money obsession? A cover story. A way to explain why he guards the formula so carefully. Because if Plankton got it, if he mass-produced it wrong, everyone would die. Not cartoon die. Really die. Slowly, painfully. The way everything at Bikini Atoll actually died. Hillenburg hid scientific diagrams in the backgrounds. Freeze frame any episode. Look at the wallpaper in SpongeBob's house. Those aren't random flowers. They're cell structures. Specifically, they're cells undergoing mitosis errors caused by radiation damage. The jellyfish? Those aren't jellyfish. In Hillenburg's original concept art, they're labeled as ephemeral manifestations. They're not living creatures. They're electrical discharges from the irradiated water. That's why they shock. That's why SpongeBob can catch them without them dying. They're not alive to begin with. But the unproduced episodes are where the real truth comes out. There's a script from 2002. Episode title, Remember, Nickelodeon killed it immediately. In this episode, SpongeBob finds a photograph of Bikini Bottom before the test, before the mutations, before everything changed. The photo shows normal fish, living normal lives, having normal jobs, and in the center, a small, regular sea sponge, non-sentient, just filtering water like sponges are supposed to do. SpongeBob looks at the photo, then at his hand, then back at the photo, and for the first time in the series, he stops smiling. He asks Gary, who in this script is revealed to be the oldest creature in Bikini Bottom. Was I always like this? Gary's response, translated from Snail, none of us were. The episode ends with SpongeBob putting the photo in a box labeled Before. The camera pulls back to reveal dozens of boxes, all labeled Before, all hidden in his library. He's been collecting evidence. He knows something's wrong. He just can't hold the thought long enough to understand it. Another unproduced script from 2004, The Day the Sky Burned. Patrick starts having flashbacks. Not memories, radiation victims don't form new memories properly, but sensory flashbacks. The smell of burning coral, the sound of water boiling, the feeling of his skin changing. He goes to Sandy, begging her to make it stop. Sandy's response is chilling. She says, direct quote from the script, "I can't fix what you are remembering, Patrick. It really happened." The script describes Patrick's realization. His face changes. For one moment, the stupidity disappears. He understands everything. He remembers everything. He knows exactly what he is and what was done to him. Then Sandy gives him a shot. The memories fade. The stupidity returns. Patrick smiles and walks away, forgetting why he came. Sandy logs the interaction in her computer. The file name, Subject P001, Memory Suppression Successful. She's not their friend. She's their handler, keeping them docile, keeping them stable, keeping them from remembering what they really are. The network interference goes deeper than killed episodes. In 2005, Nickelodeon's parent company, Viacom, received a visit from the Department of Energy. Not the FCC, not any normal regulatory body, the Department of Energy, the same department that oversees nuclear test sites. 3 weeks later, Hillenburg announced he was stepping back from the show. He said he wanted to focus on other projects, but staffers reported he seemed different after that. Quieter, defeated. One writer, speaking anonymously, said, Hillenburg told the writing room, "We've said too much already." The show changed after that, became sillier, more random, less coherent, because the coherence was the problem. The coherence was building to something Hillenburg had been trying to reveal since episode 1. In the original series Bible, the document that outlines the show's core concepts, there's a section titled The Event. It's been redacted in every public version, but one animation student at Cal Arts found an unredacted copy in their library archives. The event describes the moment of detonation, not metaphorically, literally. It describes how each character experienced the nuclear blast, how their consciousness emerged from their destruction, how they rebuilt themselves from scattered atoms and broken DNA. SpongeBob reconstructed himself around happiness because it was the last thing he felt. Patrick around confusion because he didn't understand what was happening. Squidward around anger because he knew exactly what was happening. And Mr. Krabs, he reconstructed himself around guilt. Because according to the event, Mr. Krabs was there before the blast. He was part of the naval operation. He was on one of the ships. He watched them drop the bomb. He saw what it did to his home. And when the radiation eventually got him too, when he mutated and sank back to Bikini Bottom, he found the survivors, the creatures he'd helped destroy, and they didn't remember him. They didn't remember any of it. So he opened a restaurant, started feeding them, trying to keep them alive, trying to make amends for something they don't even know he did. That's why he's so protective of the formula. It's not greed, it's penance. The Flying Dutchman isn't a ghost. He's a guilt-induced hallucination that Mr. Krabs shares with the others through residual psychic radiation, a documented phenomenon in nuclear test sites where survivors reported shared visions. Every supernatural element in the show has a radiation explanation. Hillenburg included citations in his early scripts, real scientific papers about the effects of nuclear radiation on marine ecosystems. Nickelodeon made him remove them all, but he kept hiding them in the art. Here's what Steven Hillenburg was actually trying to tell us. The show isn't set in the present, it's set in a loop, the same day, repeating forever. July 26, 1946, the day after the Baker test. That's why nothing changes. That's why SpongeBob never ages. That's why they can survive anything. They're not surviving. They're reliving, stuck in the first 24 hours after the detonation, when the radiation was still warping reality itself. Every episode is the same day from a different perspective, different fragments of broken time, different attempts to process what happened. The opening theme song, "Are you ready, kids?" That's not Painty the pirate talking to the audience. That's a naval officer addressing his crew before the detonation, the last words any of them heard before their world ended. "Aye, aye, Captain." Their last response as humans. The Pineapple House. Pineapples were used as radiation detection devices in early nuclear tests. They would place them at various distances from ground zero. If the pineapple survived, that zone was considered safe. SpongeBob lives in a pineapple because it's the only thing that survived intact. Everything else is reconstructed, reimagined, remembered wrong. Gary isn't a snail. In Hillenburg's original notes, Gary is described as the observer, the only creature that remembers everything but can't communicate it. He meows because he's trying to warn SpongeBob. Every single meow is Gary trying to say, "You're dead. We're all dead. This isn't real." But SpongeBob can't understand. None of them can. The radiation destroyed the part of their brains that processes tragedy. The jellyfishing, they're trying to capture electrical discharges from their own decomposing neurons. They're literally trying to catch their own thoughts before they dissipate. The Krusty Krab isn't a restaurant, it's a mass grave. The shape isn't a lobster trap, it's a containment structure, the kind they built over nuclear disaster sites. Mr. Krabs is keeping all the bodies in one place, feeding them, maintaining them, stopping them from spreading, because they're still radioactive, still dangerous, still contaminating everything they touch. That's why humans never enter Bikini Bottom. It's not because they can't breathe underwater, it's because the radiation levels would kill them instantly. Sandy isn't studying them, she's containing them. Her reports aren't going to Texas, They're going to the Department of Energy. She's there to make sure they never leave, never spread, never remember enough to try. The fun song? F is for fire that burns down the whole town. U is for uranium, bombs. N is for no survivors. Plankton literally sings about what happened, but they turned it into a joke, made it silly, made it safe, because the truth was too dark for children's television. Except Hillenburg never meant it for children. The original pitch was for Adult Swim, for late night audiences, for people who could handle the truth about what nuclear testing did to the Pacific. But Nickelodeon saw money. They sanitized it, brightened it, added the laugh track, and Hillenburg let them, because even a sanitized version of the truth was better than silence. In his final interview, before his death from ALS in 2018, a disease that many suspect was caused by his exposure to contaminated samples during his marine biology years, Hillenburg was asked about his proudest accomplishment. He said, "I told the truth about Bikini Bottom. Most people just didn't realize it." The interviewer laughed, thought he was joking about the show's setting, but then Hillenburg added, "Check the coordinates." Nobody did, not until after he died. But when someone finally checked the exact coordinates that appear in background navigation charts throughout the series, 11 degrees 35 minutes north, 165 degrees 23 minutes east, the exact location of Castle Bravo, the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated by the United States, 15 megatons, 1,000 times more powerful than Hiroshima, March 1st, 1954. The date appears hidden in SpongeBob's calendar in 12 different episodes. Always circled, always in red. That's not SpongeBob's birthday, it's his death day. The movie, the first one, the only one Hillenburg fully controlled, it's not about SpongeBob becoming a manager. It's about him finally remembering who he was. The crown isn't a crown, it's a naval officer's hat. The one he wore on the observation ship. SpongeBob wasn't a fry cook. He was a nuclear technician, young, eager, ready to serve his country, ready to follow orders, ready to push a button that would poison the ocean for generations. And he did push it. The entire series is his dying brain trying to rewrite history, trying to create a world where he didn't destroy everything, where his friends are still alive, where his happiness isn't a symptom of radiation psychosis, where he's innocent, but he's not. None of them are. They're all complicit. Every character was part of the operation. That's why they're all together in Bikini Bottom. They died together. They're trapped together. They're trying to forgive each other for something unforgivable. In 2019, 6 months after Hillenburg's death, his estate released one final piece of art. A single drawing. SpongeBob, standing alone on an empty seafloor. No Bikini Bottom, no friends, no pineapple house. Just SpongeBob and bones, thousands of tiny bones. The real Bikini Bottom. The caption, in Hillenburg's handwriting, "The dream is over." But there's something else. Something hidden in the background of that final drawing. If you enhance it, adjust the contrast, you can see it. Numbers. GPS coordinates. Not for Bikini Atoll this time, for Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the Manhattan Project headquarters, where they designed the bombs, where they planned the tests, where they decided that paradise was an acceptable sacrifice. Hillenburg went there in 2017, his final trip before the ALS made travel impossible. He didn't tell anyone why, but he signed the visitor log. And next to his name, he wrote one word: forgiveness. Not seeking it, offering it, to the scientists who built the bombs, to the military who dropped them, to himself for spending 20 years turning tragedy into entertainment. But here's the detail that changes everything. The visitor log shows he wasn't alone. Someone signed in with him. Someone who used an obvious alias, S Squarepants. The handwriting is different, shaky, like someone who hadn't written in years, like someone who learned to write just for this moment. The guard that day, retired now, but willing to talk, remembers them. An old man in a wheelchair and his nurse. The old man was crying, not sad crying, happy crying, like he was finally going home. The nurse wore a Texas University sweatshirt. They stayed for 3 hours, visited the memorial, left flowers, not roses or lilies, kelp, dried kelp from the Pacific, specifically from Bikini Atoll. The guard said the old man kept repeating something, quietly, like a prayer or a promise. "I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. The same word SpongeBob says every morning. Not about work, about facing another day in hell, about maintaining the illusion, about keeping the secret, about protecting us from the truth of what we did to them. There's one more script. The series finale Hillenburg wrote in 2004 but never submitted. It's called The Light Returns. It opens with SpongeBob waking up, but something's different. He's not in his pineapple. He's on the surface, on a boat, wearing a uniform. He looks around. All his friends are there, but they're human. Patrick in a naval uniform, Squidward as a communications officer, Sandy as the lead scientist, Mr. Krabs as the captain. They're all staring at the horizon, waiting. SpongeBob asks what they are waiting for. Sandy checks her watch. 60 seconds. Patrick starts crying. I don't want to forget who I am. Squidward puts down his clarinet. We already have. Mr. Krabs removes his hat. I'm sorry, boys. I'm so sorry. Sandy injects herself with something. This will help us remember. Some of us. Fragments, at least. SpongeBob looks at his hands. They're already starting to change, skin bubbling, bone softening. Will it hurt? Gary, human, the youngest member of the crew, nods. Every day, forever. The countdown begins. 10, 9, 8. SpongeBob turns to the camera. To us. His face is melting, but he's smiling. Thank you for watching our show. Thank you for laughing. Thank you for letting us pretend. 3, 2, 1. A flash of white, then the familiar opening. Are you ready, kids? But this time, we understand. They're not asking if we're ready for fun. They're asking if we're ready for the truth about Bikini Bottom, the truth about nuclear testing, the truth about what we did to paradise in the name of progress, the truth that Steven Hillenburg spent his entire career trying to tell us. SpongeBob SquarePants isn't a cartoon. It's a documentary, it's evidence, it's a warning. And we turned it into a meme. We put him on backpacks and t-shirts. We laughed at their pain. We made their tragedy into our entertainment. Because that's what humans do with uncomfortable truths. We make them silly. We make them safe. We make them sellable. But the truth remains. Somewhere in the Pacific, there's still an irradiated atoll. Still poison water. Still bones on the seafloor. Still ground zero of humanity's greatest mistake. And if you listen carefully to the ocean, really carefully, you can still hear them. Laughing. Always laughing. Because what else can you do when you're trapped in hell? The Marshall Islands, where Bikini Atoll sits, sued the United States in 2014. They wanted recognition, compensation, and apology. The case was dismissed. The official reason: too much time had passed. The statute of limitations had expired. But the real reason, the one whispered in legal circles, the evidence was too disturbing. The photos, the documents, the testimonies from survivors. If the public saw what really happened at Bikini Atoll, what really happened to the creatures living there, they'd never watch SpongeBob the same way again, and that's worth billions to Nickelodeon. Billions in merchandise, billions in licensing, billions in keeping the truth buried under colorful animation and silly voices. Steven Hillenburg knew this. He tried to tell us. He hid the truth in plain sight for 20 years. Every episode, every character, every joke, it's all evidence. The question is, can you ever watch it the same way again?